Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the astrology of 2022. I hope that you are all doing well out there. Please let me know in the chat where you are stopping in from. Doing things a little bit differently today, doing a little bit of a solo show, seeing how that goes. Still going to have some guests for the new and the full moon later on in January, but try to take you through the highlights of January so I can prepare you on this winter solstice day. So happy winter solstice to all of you. All right, so we are starting off this month with Jupiter in Pisces. At the end of December here, Jupiter is going to be moving into Pisces. We'll go over some of the highlights here before we get into the nitty gritty. Saturn is in Aquarius, just separating from a square from Uranus. We've got a Mercury that is going to be retrograding in January this month. We've got Venus in the midst of her retrograde, making a Cazimi, stationing direct at the end of the month. Mars moves into Capricorn. The North Node moves into Taurus. We've got a new moon on January the 2nd and a full moon on January the 17th. So some big picture thoughts that we have going on here. I'm seeing some people stopping in from the chat. It's very nice to see all of you. Hope that you're doing well out there. Andrea's stopping in from Croatia. Space Tiger Tarot. Andrea is actually going to be my guest for the new moon in Capricorn. I think that's going to be on December the 31st. So I'm really glad that she's stopping in. Very talented astrologer and tarot reader. So make sure you check that out. We've got Casey Jones stopping in from Oregon and Cheryl here from Washington State. Nice to see all of you. A few things before we dive into the astrology. I gave you kind of the big picture thoughts. Just a few more housekeeping things before we kind of dive into it here. I am running my Decans of Capricorn workshop in January. That's going to be happening on January the 15th. You can sign up with an early bird discount until the end of December with the 20% off coupon code Capricorn20. There is also a winter bundle where you can sign up for Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces all together and get a little bit of an extra discount. So there is a link to that in the description of this video, or you can find it at my website, spencermichaud.com. If you would like to support the work that I do here with these readings and these videos and all of the things that I'm working on, a couple things you can do. Make sure if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Hit that like button for me. It can help the algorithm get out to more people. If you'd like to make a material donation during the live stream, there's a little $sign in the chat box. That's called a super chat or a super sticker. If you have a particular question that you want to ask me, you can hit that super sticker or super chat and it'll show up and I'll highlight and I'll be able to see it in the chat box and I will do my best to get to that question. You can also make a donation at buymeacoffee.com. I am taking new clients right now for the new year, so if you are interested in getting your chart read or learning about the transits that are coming up for the new year, you can also book at spencermichaud.com. All right, my friends, those are all my business things out of the way. Let's take a look at the chart. We've got a few more people stopping in. We've got Christopher coming from Denver, Colorado, and the winter trine muse from Oregon coast. We've got all of our West Coasters here today. We've got quite a faction from Oregon stopping by. So welcome to all of you. All right, so here we are looking at the chart of January 1st, 2022. We are kind of flipping over the calendar here into a new year and starting to kind of get this new energy. Today is kind of the first day of Capricorn as I'm recording this on the 21st of December, where we're seeing the return of the light. And for the next few weeks, we may be trying to decide where we want to build our next project or our next ornate structure. We are in the time period where Saturn is sort of highlighted. The sun is in the domicile of Saturn in Capricorn. And right now, Saturn is hanging out in one of its preferred domiciles, Aquarius. So we may be really thinking about the big picture with the sun in Capricorn, with Saturn in Aquarius ruling that sun, or providing the clay for the potter of the sun. There's an astrologer I really like named Martine Hermes that thinks of the planet in a sign as the potter, or sort of someone who is taking an action, and the planet that is providing for the planet as the ruler of the house, as the clay or the material that they have to work with. So right now the sun is in a place that is concerned with building up material structures, but also getting rid of the old. So it's like out with the old, in with the new type of thing. And Saturn is going to be providing sort of a 30,000 foot viewpoint to be able to build from. A new blueprint is what we're looking at here. One of the things I really like to talk about with Saturn and Jupiter in particular is we've got Saturn kind of creating the platonic forms, the idealized forms, that then Jupiter, newly ingressed into Pisces at the beginning of the month, is sort of acting as a demiurge, or someone who is the architect that is creating from those plans. So right now we've just recently seen the separation of Jupiter and Saturn, with Jupiter ingressing into the sign of the fish in Pisces. So a little bit of a different vibe. Jupiter's been hanging out in Aquarius for the last 6 months or so. We got a little taste of Jupiter and Pisces at the very it's sort of the beginning quarter of 2021. I believe that was somewhere between February and May. We got a little taste of it. And I know that for me, particularly around that period of time, I was starting to question the grind and going off in search of maybe a new animating purpose or principle, and seeing how I could be more efficient with my time and things of that nature. So some of those things are going to be coming back. Jupiter right now is moving very fast. So we're going to see Jupiter moving through Pisces within 4 or 5 months here, and then ingressing into Aries. So it's in its really the fast part of its cycle. So one of the things I think about with that overall, with just January in general, is the dreams that we may have with Jupiter and Pisces, where we're going off in search of some kind of new meaning, some kind of new ethics, some kind of new moral principle, may lead us to some pretty interesting manifestations. It's kind of like if you can dream it, it may come into physical reality much quicker than normal because of Jupiter's access to all of its own resources. Now, there are limitations that we're working within. I happen to believe that when a planet is in a higher sphere, I guess, planetary sphere, and in the sort of celestial sphere model that we are working with a geocentric model of the cosmos that traditional astrology has been drawing upon, you're still going to be beholden to that Saturnian blueprint. So I think that we're still in this phase where we need to think about the collective good. We need to think about the type of ideals that we have moving forward. Planets in air signs require some flexibility. Things aren't as solid and secure as we might normally be used to. I know this is something that we've talked a lot about on this channel, and also in my own domestic family situation, is it's really requiring us to be, to not have a ton of solid expectations about how things are going to be, because things are shifting so quickly. So it requires us to think on our feet. We may not have all the information right away, so we have to kind of wait until we get a clearer picture of where we want to go. And I think that that's what Saturn requires of us, is that patience, that endurance. And this is true with the Sun in Capricorn as well. One of the ways I think you can think about the difference between Capricorn and Aquarius, and that those two Saturn-ruled signs, is I like to think of Capricorn as everything inside the castle walls. We're building the material structures that are going to support us. And when we get to Aquarius, we may see everything outside the castle walls, right? All the things that are in exile, that have been cast out. And the other thing you can think about with Aquarius and Saturn is sort of the energy of, how do I want to put this? The energy of ideas that may feel limiting, like a glass ceiling type of energy, where we are only allowing the type of information that will support a specific narrative. So one of the things that Saturn in Aquarius is limiting is sort of like people that want to say, well, these are the only facts that we're going to allow into our consciousness because these are what supports our specific narrative. So I would caution you to make sure that you're staying open to multiple perspectives around this period of time, and you're not just taking the information that supports your specific narrative, because that can back you into a corner that can be really hard to get out of. The other thing too is we're trying to maybe release some of our limiting beliefs around this period of time as well. We're also, Saturn being really strong is encouraging us to be a little bit distant. We're still in the midst of the pandemic with the Omicron variant really starting to wreak havoc in various areas of the world, especially where I live in the Midwest. So we're being asked to be responsible and to think of the communal good and to maybe delay some of the plans that we had. And it's a really tough thing to do. And we've been doing this for a long time now. And I know that there's some fatigue around that, but hopefully we can muster up the strength to keep doing what is best for the most amount of people. Yeah, Lisa in the chat is saying confirmation bias. Yeah, that's a really great word for Saturn and Aquarius, because we tend to say, oh, well, this is our truth based on what we want it to be, right? Or what we think it should be. And we're gonna only cherry pick the facts that will support that on some level. So, and this is true for people on all sides of political spectrums, all different demographics. Everybody does it. So it's something just to be aware of, that if you're feeling opinionated about something, be careful that you aren't falling into that trap of, like Lisa says, the confirmation bias. And I know that I'm guilty of this too. So I'm watching myself for those tendencies as well. We're in the midst of this Venus retrograde here at the beginning of January. Like I said, we're going to see a cazimi on the 8th of January at 18 degrees of Capricorn, and then the direct station on the 29th. This is really speaking to a review of some of our bureaucratic structures with the third decan of Capricorn. So we'll get to that in a second. I'll break down the decans in depth here, and we will use that as a canvas and a foundation for all of the more minor transits that we're going to be experiencing. I'll also break down today some of the synodic cycles of important planets, because we've got a lot of action happening right now with Venus's synodic cycle, with Saturn's synodic cycle is actually going to play a role here in January as well, as we see Saturn making its heliacal setting and its cazimi eventually, I believe in the beginning of February. So I'll explain all that in depth. But if you have questions on any of this, feel free to slow me down. I have a few hours for you to spend with you today. If you have questions on things that I'm going through, I might try to go a little bit faster than I normally would when I'm having a conversation with a guest, but I want to have a conversation with all of you today. So future past astrology is saying, as an Aquarius sign, I've often had to struggle with the inflexibility of my progressive views. Hello, Saturn. That's a really great realization, future past. I think that anytime we can become aware of the tendencies that we're falling into, that can help us to make a choice in the moment that maybe, help us to find balance and equilibrium. I really do believe that the planets are, they have an influence on our character and our actions, but we do have this ability, I think, to make a choice in the moment if we become aware of the influence that they have. I don't think we have to completely be a slave to the planets. I think that once we become aware of this feeling that we get and recognize them as feelings, we don't always have to act on those feelings. And I think that's really one of the greatest realizations I've had from studying astrology is, even though I may be influenced by some of these planetary or stellar energies, I can make a different choice in the moment through my awareness. And that awareness in Greek, in the Greek philosophical system was called nous or pronoia, the ability to have the foreknowledge of something so that you can make a better choice in that moment. Lisa says that we only see the reality that reinforces our beliefs. Yeah, I agree. Lisa's always hitting the nail on the head with a lot of her realizations. Maybe Lisa can come join me on a show one of these days, because she's a great astrologer in her own right and has a lot of really great philosophical thoughts. So thank you, Lisa, for all of your contributions here in the chat. Dimfy is joining us on the solstice from the Netherlands. So welcome, Dimfy. It's always nice to see you as well. All right. Yeah, pretty big day coming up on the 18th of January with Uranus turning direct, the North Node moving into Taurus, and then shortly afterwards, Mars is going to be moving into Capricorn. I'll get to all that though. Let's start breaking down the first decan of Capricorn. So I'm going to break this down in 10-day sections and talk about the canvas we're going to be painting on. So from January 1st to January 10th, we're going to be working through the second decan of Capricorn. So in the first decan, and if you can see in my little window here, we've got the Two of Pentacles type of energy, where we see the shifting of the day and the night dominance, where we see the return of the ascension of the sun in the sky. So every day the sun rises a little bit higher after the winter solstice. So it's like the return of the light. We are at the darkest point where we had gotten, we were carrying the burden or the load of the 10 of Wands in the last decan of Sagittarius and feeling overwhelmed and saying, we've just got to get to the finish line. And in these first few weeks of Capricorn, we're trying to, weigh the year that we just lived and figure out where we might want to plant our seeds moving forward. So after a few weeks of that, I really think today in particular, as I'm talking about this on the 21st, is a great day to set intentions as well. I'm a firm believer that intention setting should start around the solstice time, not necessarily just January 1st, that arbitrary calendrical date. But once we start January 1st, though, we're going to be firmly in the second decan of Capricorn. And that decan has some syncretizations with the Three of Pentacles in the Rider-Waite Tarot here. And in that card, we see three figures working together on an ornate cathedral structure. Austin Coppock calls that decan the pyramid, and we're talking about the area of the zodiac between 10 and 20 degrees of Capricorn. This is a Mars-ruled decan in the descending Chaldean order. In the triplicity system, it's ruled by Venus. So we can think of it maybe as a combination of those energies, or depending on which system you use, you can choose which ruler would fit best for you. The Book of Thoth calls this the Lord of Works, and Book T, material works. The daimon or spirit associated with Capricorn 2 is Hygeia, the goddess of good health, a daughter of Asclepius. So one of the things that we think about with Hygeia is to be able to do, or really meticulous work or hard labor. There's a lot of talk about blueprints, architecture, labor and toil, building your castle, laying the foundation after you found the right location. So in the first decan of Capricorn, we may be saying, what are the pros and cons of a particular area that I want to build in, whether it's philosophical or physical. Once we get to the second decan, we're like, what's the plan? How are we going to build this step by step? So it's also about gaining support for your vision. And one of the things you can do to support your vision is to take care of your body. So you're not going to be able to do hard work if you're not staying healthy, right? I mean, a stronger skeletal and foundation is going to help you move forward with your plans. So that brings in the daimon or spirit, Hygeia. We may be bound to a very daunting task in the second decan of Capricorn. It's still a Saturnian sign where there may be things that we have to do that aren't necessarily fun, but we have to kind of suck it up and do the hard work necessary to really, bring things into material form. One of the things I like that Liz Green says about Capricorn and Saturn in general is that in the myth of Kronos, he castrates his father, Uranus. And she says that that Saturn likes to castrate things into being. Because what you're doing with Saturn or Kronos castrating is you're castrating future possibilities and concretizing it into some kind of material form. So who which planet in the zodiac is very concerned with endless possibilities? Well, that would be our friend Jupiter or Zeus. And Saturn's going to come along and say, well, these are the limitations that you have. These are the possibilities that are going to be let go of when we actually commit to something. So this is why we think of it as commitment, as something of that nature. So when we're thinking about Capricorn too, what kind of things are you committing to? What other possibilities do you have to let go of to make your material vision a reality? The danger with this decan, and with all Capricorn decans on some level, is getting overly ambitious. The fatal flaw of hubris, where we are shooting a little bit too high with our vision, where we're trying to reach a spiritual goal through material means. This brings up some of the thoughts of the Tower card, which is a Mars-ruled card. So we could think about that, like the negative side of the Three of Pentacles, maybe that Tower card, where if we're getting to overly materially ambitious, that may be leading to a downfall, because there's some things that we can't reach just by material means alone, and that's something to be kept aware of and bring us into temperance and balance. We've got a couple fixed stars in this decan that are important. We've got Vega at 15 degrees of Capricorn and Rukbat at 16 degrees Capricorn. Vega being a fixed star in the lyre, or the instrument of Orpheus. So that one having to do with charisma, with being able to play the music that soothes the savage beast on some level, artistic ability. Rukbat is in Sagittarius, the archer, so there's some themes of moving towards our goal and aiming towards a target. So those things are active in this decan as well. All right. So as we move forward into the daily part of Capricorn 2, we're beginning the month in a balsamic moon. So this is really the end of the lunar phase. And on New Year's Day, Happy New Year's, the sun will be making a trine to Uranus. So here we're beginning with a Sun-Uranus trine in the earth signs. So we can see that right here. And this is a very electric type of aspect, right? Where we may be tasked with finding a new way to utilize our resources. Sometimes and if it's you just had a fruitful, abundant Christmas or whatever holiday that you celebrate, maybe you received a new gift or something that you're putting into use. Maybe you got some new technology or something that will be a tool to help you to move forward, in a container for your creativity. So this is a great time to think of a new way to organize your life, to find a fertile new rhythm as well. Uranus in Taurus is really asking us to find a new rhythm to the way that we organize our days and our structures. I did this recently in the last few weeks as we actually have the Saturn-Uranus square. I put up this giant dry erase board, this 2-month-long calendar that was a dry erase board in my kitchen, so that I could see a little bit more into the future and give myself a little bit of runway when I'm scheduling guests for my live streams, when I'm trying to prepare for my readings and my webinars. Because I was finding that with all of the different tasks that I have with my astrology business, it just was starting to feel a little bit overwhelming trying to pack it all into like a week or 1 week before those things were due. And by giving yourself a little bit of runway, and myself in this case, you're able to pace yourself better. And I think that this aspect, this trine between the sun and Uranus, could be speaking to that a little bit. Like, how do you pace yourself? How are you going to build in a way that is innovative, in a way that is allowing for the new rhythm that's required of you? A lot of the times we try to do a new task with an old method, and that can really lead to a lot of frustration. And as creatures of habit, we say, well, we had success doing it this way in the past, and well, I'm going to apply that method again because it brought me success. But this is when we're required to change and be flexible and find something new. So that's how we're starting off our first day of January. When we move forward to the 2nd, we're going to be looking at a new moon. So, oops, there we go. We're back. And we're back. Screen share. So what we're looking at here is a new moon in the 2nd decan of Capricorn that we just kind of talked about a little bit. And I'll break this down in depth with my good friend, Andrea from Croatia. She's very well versed in animal symbolism as well, so I'm looking forward to having a good chat with her regarding that. But here we see the new moon on January the 2nd at 12 degrees of Capricorn. Just some basic themes with this. This is, again, we're going to be bringing in the trine with Uranus, I think is the major aspect with this. So this may be really the time to start that new routine, to start building your new, your new empire, your new project, whatever it is that inspires you. This new moon is going to be hosted by Saturn, which is an aversion to the new moon, but there is a Hellenistic technique called lichen girding, where if a planet is in the same sign as its ruler, they have this secret line of communication on some level. So here we have the two signs of Saturn being Aquarius and Capricorn. So there is some secret communication between them. So this new moon, you will be able to draw upon the energy of Saturn and communicating through the realm of ideals, the Platonic ideals, and maybe the more material realm. So that's good. We've got Venus still retrograde, co-present with this lunation. The moon is in exile, though. That's the thing about these Capricorn new moons, is this is a difficult place for the moon. So this may be something where we're experiencing a lot of hard work, where the nurturing that we're normally expecting to receive, the gentleness is hard to find. This is where we just feel like we're grinding it out, and it may be difficult to find the more softer support that we need. I have an animal of the month here as well, and I'll get to that in a second, but just to give you some thoughts as I go through this, the animal that I pulled for this month was the deer, which speaks to gentleness and intuition and finding our way in this kind of, going with the flow type of way rather than just, trying to be super aggressive about pursuing our ambitions. So think about this as, how are you going to find the support that you need while you are building your castle, building your pyramid, building whatever is important to you? How are you going to take care of your body like Hygeia would require of you to make it through to the end without burning out? I know this past week for me and my family has been just really, really busy. I don't know about all of you, but I'm ready for just some downtime. But I think that if we are balanced, if we give ourselves runway, we can achieve great things. It's all about consistency. This is one of the secret superpowers of Taurus 2. This is where I have my moon, and this is where Uranus is asking us to do something new. It's not necessarily about doing everything in one day. It's just about showing up and doing those tasks for the day, and then showing up again, and then showing up again, and then showing up again. Even if you don't feel like it, just show up. Take a rest when you need to rest, but keep doing the little things that will eventually lead into a great, grand work of art. Future Past Astrology is saying, oh yes, new approaches to using time. I love hearing about all the ways that people fill out their Saturn-Uranus Mad Lib. I love that. Saturn-Uranus Mad Lib. We need to create some of those, don't we? Remco is here from the Netherlands. Nice to see you. Remco, thank you for joining us. You always have some insightful comments as well. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in hearing what all of you have to say about these aspects. I'll try to keep tabs on the chat box. Remember that I do have about a 20-second delay when you put your comment in there to when I see it. So if it's you're like, oh well, I said that 20 seconds ago, you'll know why. All right, so that's our new moon. We're going to be working pretty hard around this period of time, trying to build something for the year ahead as the sun starts to gain in light. Remember, Jupiter is in Pisces at this point too. So one of the things that I think would be helpful is to really get clear about what your why is. A lot of the times the labor of Saturn can really be supported when you have the sort of the moral fiber and the passion and the philosophical impetus of Jupiter supporting it. One of the only problems I see with Jupiter and Saturn right now is that they are in aversion to one another. Jupiter and Saturn were working together for a period of time over the last half of 2021, but now they sort of have slightly different agendas, being in aversion to one another. Jupiter is really wanting to go off into the wilderness of the mind and the imagination, where Saturn is saying, hey, it is important for us to talk about how we're going to organize our idealistic, our society moving forward. We've got some things going on in America around the social infrastructure, and this is one of the things I think is being delayed right now because of Venus retrograde conjoining Pluto. We had sort of a backdoor deal between some of the Senate Democrats that they would pass the hard infrastructure, and then eventually they would pass the social infrastructure, things like elder and child care, things that would support money to combat climate change, some prescription drug price help for people. And then some of the Senate Democrats started to back off on this. Some of the more central Democrats started backing off right when Venus went retrograde. And that's exposing some of the corruption that I think we were seeing with the Venus-Pluto conjunction in the third decan of Capricorn and the bureaucratic structures. And it's frustrating. I'm sure that there will be some movement with this eventually, fingers crossed, because I do think that the social infrastructure is just as important as the hard infrastructure. But that's some of the things that we might be seeing as we move through this new moon. Now, the other thing that's happening at this new moon is that Mercury is moving into the sign of Aquarius. So this is a shift from Mercury's journey in Capricorn in the late stages of December. So here we see Mercury hanging out now with Saturn. And this decan of Aquarius is is synchronized with the Five of Swords. So here we see a figure that has had some kind of conflict. This is a card that's called Defeat in the Book T, in the Book of Thoth, where we have a one figure collecting all the swords, another two figures going off into the frontier, into exile. So remember I said that we had everything on the outside of the castle walls as Aquarius, where you may need to start thinking of things in a unique fashion when Mercury moves into Aquarius, where the outside the box thinking is really important. Because it's co-present with Saturn, it's really important to think long-term as well. Instant gratification is not one of the qualities of Saturn or Aquarius or Capricorn for that matter. So you may have to think about, well, what is best for all different parts of my life or my community? You may have to think in a very sober fashion. And you may feel a little bit like maybe you had a situation in your own life where you wanted something to work out in a certain way, and just the way things are right now are making that difficult, and it may feel like a defeat. But again, there is a gift to be had from planets in Aquarius, even though sometimes it feels challenging. I know for me personally, Aquarius is a tough time of year because when the sun moves into Aquarius, it's the ruler of my ascendant, since I'm a Leo ascendant, and it feels very foreign, and that's what we can think of as a planet in exile, as a foreigner that doesn't maybe have access to the collective or to the prevailing philosophical rationale of the time. Now, there's a lot of good that can come from not being part of the herd or the collective and seeing things from outside the game, so to speak. When you can see how the game is played, sometimes you can go in and you can manipulate the rules a little bit. And I mean that in the best possible way. If you know how the game's played, you're going to have a better chance of success if you are able to see things holistically. So that's some of the things that we're going to be looking at with Mercury here moving into Aquarius concurrently with this new moon. All right. So if we keep on rolling, everyone doing okay out there in digital land? Thank you so much for spending your solstice with me today. I really appreciate all of you. It's one of the things I'm grateful for is this wonderful international community that we've built here on this channel and these live streams. It's really, really fascinating, really encouraging. I'm just so grateful for all of you that join me from all the parts of the world and that are willing to spend this time with me. So thank you so much. Okay, what we are looking at here, we are moving on to January the 3rd. And this is a fascinating aspect that we have here. This is the point where Jupiter is at what is called the bending of the nodes. So here we have the nodes at 1 degree Gemini and 1 degree Sagittarius. And Jupiter is exactly squaring this position from 1 degree of Pisces right here. So anytime a planet is at the bending of the nodes, it's sort of a turning point. It's this is the north bending, so Jupiter is heading towards the north node. Some kind of decision is going to need to be made in regards maybe to the Pisces area of your life. It is something where we're heading towards a point of increase. When it's at the south bending, like let's say Jupiter in this case, if Jupiter was in Virgo here, it would be at the south bending heading towards the north node, which would be a point where you'd have to make a decision about letting go, which is one of the significations of the south node. When Jupiter's at this north node here, we're saying, okay, what meaning can we infuse into these new possibilities that are offered to us in the final stages of the north node in Gemini? How can we be flexible? What paths are worth pursuing and which ones need to be let go of? How are we going to go into the stratum or the mycelium of our mind to create from our imaginations? And how are we going to bring abundance and benevolence and order and peace to our worlds? This is one of the secret significations of Jupiter. Is Zeus was an order bringer in Greek mythology. And he fought a great war with the Titans to bring order to the realm. And this is something where you can utilize this Jupiter energy to bring peace and order to your respective worlds. And one of the things that I will say about Jupiter in the first degrees of Pisces is we're dealing with the Eight of Cups energy. And there's an exercise that I've been doing lately, and I've talked about this in past shows, but I have a new book called Tarot and the Gates of Light by Mark Horn. You can see this here. And it talks about the Kabbalistic tree of life and the tarot. And the eights are associated with one of the Sephira, or which is basically it's like a spiritual energy center that it roughly has some associations with the chakra energy centers of the Eastern system. And this Sephira that is associated with the eights is called Hod. And Hod is the energy of humility and surrender. So we may be asked to surrender to going off into the wilderness, leaving the old material successes behind in search of a new animating principle. So there may be some frustration when Jupiter is moving through the first degrees of Pisces, because what happens is you wake up one day, and I know that I did when Jupiter dipped its toe into Pisces before. It was like, oh, I'd been grinding out 5 to 7 of these solo videos every week, really, really detailed, lots of prep work. It was just way too much. And I woke up one day and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to completely burn myself out. I don't have the passion for doing it this way. I still love the astrology, but this way that I'm doing it, the form that I'm doing it in, wasn't working for me anymore. And I just said, nope, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to just do these live streams, and then I'm going to, put some energy into creating some webinars and doing more research and things like that. So one of the things that I think you might start to feel when Jupiter moves into Pisces, and especially at this bending, at the north bending, is I want you to ask yourself, what form does my spiritual energy or passion want to take? Don't get attached to the form, because form is temporal. Form is always changing. but the essence remains. And if you feel like you're losing something tangible, connect with the essence, because that's going to be your place of power, is when you get that, when you start channeling divine spiritual essence rather than getting fixated on the form. And that's good advice for Capricorn season, because one of the dangers of Capricorn season is getting really fixated on the form to the point where you can start to feel overwhelmed with all of the material responsibilities that you have. I think that's what we're dealing with Jupiter at the bendings here. Jody is here today, joining us from Florida. Hi, Jody. She says hi, Spencer, watching while I'm working. Great stuff so far. Thank you, Jody. I appreciate you. All right. So we are moving along after Jupiter is moving off of the bending of the north bending of the nodes. All right, another comment here coming in from Casey Jones. I have a 12th house stellium in Sagittarius, Moon, Jupiter, Uranus, South Node, and Neptune. Not sure how much further into the wilderness I can go. Yeah, I feel you, Casey. I've got a couple planets in the 12th house, and going off into the wilderness is something that I am pretty comfortable with for the most part. But yes, it's a balance. I think that's the key. It's a balance between going off into our imaginations and our mind. The danger of Jupiter and Pisces, the first decan, is escaping into that world and not coming back and grounding that spiritual wisdom. One of the birds that I really like, that's a spiritual teacher for me, that I've got a little statue behind me, a wood carving that my grandfather gave me, is the nuthatch. And the nuthatch is able to bring spiritual wisdom down to earth. Nuthatches actually climb down trees, which is very interesting. So that represents bringing things from the spiritual realm into the practical physical world. So be careful of that as we move through Pisces. And I've got a super sticker from Jody with a very generous donation. Thank you so much, Jody. I appreciate you. Thank you for that donation. If any of you want to make donations, there's a little $sign at the end of the chat here. That's called a super sticker or a super chat. And that really does support the work that I do here. And I thank you so much. What you're buying me is really the gift of time to do this research for all of these lives and my webinars and things like that. So thank you so much. Remco is saying, Hode always reminds me of a sort of mental correction, Mercury, to the impulses of Netzach, Venus. Yeah, I agree with that, because each of these Sephira are associated with a planet, and Hode is associated with Mercury, and Netzach being associated with Venus, as Remco is pointing out. What I love about the Tree of Life is that we do have these balancing energies. You really will have one Sephira on one side and another, the balancing factor on the other. So Remco is pointing out that the balance that we have between Hode and Netzach is eventually leading to Yesod, which is the birth canal. So we combine these two energies, and that will help us to manifest something into the material world, which is called Malkuth. Eventually, maybe if I get well-versed enough in this, maybe I'll teach a workshop on the Tree of Life or the Sephirah. But I'm going through this 49-day meditation practice right now, where I'm comparing Sephirah in a way that mimics the exodus of the Hebrews from Egypt and their liberation. So a liberation from freedom and slavery. And it's a really interesting meditation. It takes a lot of mental discipline, but it's really amazing how when you commit to a spiritual practice, it will bring you those lessons. And I've been brought many lessons during this practice that I've been doing with my good friend Melissa LaFara, who turned me on to this book, that have really tested me, but also been great teachers. All right, Casey's saying, it's my third house Jupiter, so I guess I don't have a choice. Literally live in the wilderness. That's fun. I want to live in the wilderness. Susanna is joining us from Finland. All right, if we keep rolling along here, let's see, am I missing any comments? Dimpy is talking about the mycelium of our mind, right? And the head is like a magic mushroom thinking out of the box and form. Yeah, I love that mycelium metaphor for Pisces in particular, because we're really going almost underground on some level, and learning how all these connections are made, sort of like the Matrix. I like to think of the Matrix with Pisces as well, which is apropos, because right as Jupiter's moving into Pisces, the fourth Matrix movie is coming out this week. So pretty interesting stuff. All right, if I keep going here, We are moving forward to the 5th, January the 5th, where the aspect on January the 5th is a sextile between Venus and Neptune. So Neptune's been hanging out in Pisces for a while here. And here we have a sextile between those two planets. Venus in Capricorn retrograding is asking us to review our values around how we organize the structures, the material structures of our life. When it's making contact with Neptune in Pisces 3, Pisces 3 is really about the sacrifices that we're willing to make to bring our vision into the world. It is a decan that is about the emotional extremes of both despair and hope. And so we may be needing to get in touch with how we may go to emotional extremes during this period of time. What kind of things bring us hope, and what types of ways can we avoid feeling the despair of our own impending mortality? I think that was one of the things that I've been thinking about with that as well. All right. So this may be a nice time to just kind of take a little bit of a breather, to really get in touch with what your motivations are, to be able to regain some of the harmony and balance. When you get an awareness of the sacrifices that you are making, you can start utilizing that Venusian energy of bringing things back into balance and back into harmony. So if you feel like you're sacrificing too much or becoming a martyr for a cause, this aspect may help you to find the right balance. I got another sticker here from Casey. Thank you so much, Casey, for your donation. I really appreciate that. I love these little beautiful, cute little animals that we have here, little foxes and little lemons and limes hugging each other. It's quite endearing. Lisa says, I would love to hear more about the Tree of Life. Gary Caton refers to it on his most recent podcast. Yeah, Gary Caton's a giant in this field. He's really good at the alchemical relationships and the Kabbalistic relationships. He's a Mercury expert. I should have him on the show too. I think he'd be a great guest to talk about stuff, especially related to Mercury. I'm new to the Kabbalah, so this is something that I'm committing to learning in the months ahead. So you are learning right along with me, but I like it that way. I like when I'm passionate about something and when I'm feeling fired up about learning something, I love sharing it with people. And I hope that you can hear the passion of my learning experience. And I may make some mistakes every once in a while when I'm in process, but we're all in process. So forgive me for that. And hopefully I'll have some insights for you as well. Okay, if we move forward, and I think we may actually come in under 3 hours this time, this monthly, depending on how many stories how many tangents I get off on. But I really love talking with all of you in the chat here. It's fun. This is so much fun for me, being able to do these things live. Now, if we move to the January the 8th, this is when we have the cazimi, or the conjunction of the Sun and Venus. So here we have the conjunction of the Sun and Venus at 18 degrees of Capricorn. This is called the inferior conjunction of Venus, which really, it just means that it's conjoining while it is retrograde, and it's appearing to conjoin inside the sphere of the Sun instead of outside. So it's, or the Earth. I mean, there's some astronomy associated with it that I probably need to do more research on to have a more clear understanding of. But you can always think of the inferior conjunctions of either Venus and Mercury with the Sun is when they are in their retrograde cycle. The superior conjunction happens when the planets are direct. Now, there's only a differentiation between those two conjunctions when we are talking about Venus and Mercury, because the superior planets, the one that are outside the orbit of the Sun in the celestial sphere model, only make one conjunction, and that's when they are direct. So we will see that with Saturn coming up soon, but I'll show you the difference between that. JJ is joining us from Holland. Hello, JJ. Thank you for your star emoji. I love that we're bringing the stars into this today. All right, so let's talk about this Venus cazimi inferior conjunction. So this is the beginning of a new Venus cycle. Venus has probably been feeling a little bit weakened As she went under the beams of the sun, part of the synodic cycle of a planet is there's a couple moments that are really important, and it's not just the conjunction. It's the moment that the planet becomes invisible, which is, in this case, it would be the heliacal setting of Venus where it goes under the beams. Then we have the cazimi moment, or when the planet is in the heart of the sun. And that's when it's sort of getting an infusion of solar vitality. The planet is sort of weakened when it first goes under the beams, and then it's going to start separating and emerging as a morning star Venus. And then it's going to regain its power, like rising from its sickbed. And in traditional or medieval astrology, they would think of a planet taking to its sickbed when it goes under the beams, getting maybe the medicine that it needs when it is infusing with the sun, and then rising from the sickbed and going, back out into the world. But this is going to talk about a shift from Venus's evening star phase to her morning star phase as a warrior Venus. Now, my favorite Venus expert, if we think of Gary Caton as the Mercury expert, my favorite Venus expert is most definitely Shu Yap of Intercycle Astrology. She has been doing some really great work on the Inanna story and has a fantastic article up about which phase of the Inanna myth we may be experiencing with the conjunction of Venus and the sun. So the inferior conjunction. And one of the things that she talks about is that this may be the point in the cycle where, Inanna has to sacrifice someone from the upper world to the underworld to be able to escape back into the world of the living. It's like a trade on some level. So there may be some things where we're saying, well, if we're going to move forward with a new phase of our life, we have to give up something. There's always a trade-off when we're trying to build something new. And this is happening at 18 degrees of Capricorn, where this is that second decan we're talking about building new ornate structures. I want you also to look to the Taurus and Libra areas of your chart. Every one of us are going to have different topics associated with Taurus and Libra. In this case, in this Taurus rising chart, this arbitrary Taurus rising chart that I have on here, the themes that would come in through the ninth house, where the cazimi would be happening, through our belief systems, would probably have an impact on on our body with the first house, how we view ourselves and our personality, our character, but also the way that we take care of our bodies with the sixth house, maybe the way we organize the routines and the work that we do behind the scenes that we might not get a lot of credit for, the actions that we're going to take before we bring things to completion, which is also a signification of the sixth house being the cadent house from the angle on the seventh house. So do that exercise for your chart. And if you want to get in touch with some of these things in more depth, doing a reading with me is a great way to do that. I have 3 month ahead readings that are really great for getting into depth with these nitty gritty details as well. And we can kind of look at your perfected time lord for the year, look at where all these things are happening in your particular chart. But again, you may be feeling a new impulse, a new thing that you want to build. So this is a pivotal moment for the Venus retrograde cycle. So check out Shu's work. Recognize you're going to be getting an important download in regards to how you create harmony in your life. It's going to be related to Taurus and Libra, and it will be happening through the vector of the Capricorn topic in your life. And that'll be different for everyone. Okay, as we move forward on to the 9th, the next aspect that we are breaking down is the last quarter moon. So here we're getting to the first quarter moon. Pardon me, I misspoke. So this is the first quarter moon where we have a square, the opening square in the lunation cycle. So this is the point after the new moon where we may be having some kind of existential crisis. So this first quarter phase is some kind of difficulty or challenge in bringing the new energy that was infused at the sun-moon conjunction into reality. Think of new moons as the solar divine light, the impulse being infused into the moon, which is the body. So this is like saying, okay, here's the moment where we're planting the seed of divine awareness into a lunar body. And when we get to this first quarter phase, we may be tested, right? And say, well, how are you gonna bring this into reality? What is the test? What is the heroic act that you're going to take to make this seed into a mature plant that will see the maturity of that plant at the full moon? And then eventually at the last quarter moon, we see the decay of that plant, and we have to let go, and we change our minds, and we get ready for the next cycle. So here we're seeing a square between the sun at 19 degrees of Capricorn and the moon at 19 degrees of Aries. Now, Aries 2, this is very close to the exaltation degree of the sun. So there may be something where, because Capricorn 2 requires the cooperation of others, we may feel some conflict between our individuality within that plan. And we may say, well, this is what I need. And many other people may be saying, well, this is what I need. And I want to be the sovereign king of this project. So there may be some challenges of figuring out who the boss is, how you create identity when you're working together in tandem to build an ornate structure. So think about how you can be the master of your own domain while still contributing to the ornate physical structures that require cooperation. And this is bringing in some of the things of the hexagram that we'll talk about at the end of the show, which is, just to preview it, being able to work with others and cooperate is important to this hexagram. Okay, checking the chat here. Future Past says, I love the idea through the myth of Inanna's underworld journey of stripping away the external to find courage and connection. Yeah, that's a great part of that myth where, if you're not familiar with the myth of Inanna, again, Shu Yap has some great material on this, webinars, articles, all of these things. But the basic gist of it is that Inanna had to go through these 7 gates into the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal. And in each one of these gates, she was stripped of a particular, chakra type of energy, and then had to face Ereshkigal, was killed by Ereshkigal, and then resurrected eventually by being sort of rescued by mourners that were having compassion for Ereshkigal's pain. And then she leaves the underworld and eventually is gaining back these chakra energetic powers through these gates and re-emerging into the world. So we've got these different cycles where different energetic centers are being activated. And those, by the way, those activations happen at the Moon-Venus conjunctions. When we have a crescent moon, we're going to see Moon-Venus conjunctions and chakra centers either having a release depending on Venus's cycle or having an activation of them. Now, I'm not as well versed in all of this as Shu, so I don't want to make a mistake by trying to overly explain this, but that's the gist of it. And again, support our friends from Down Under. Shu is an off-the-grid astrologer in Australia. Really have some great conversations with her. I'm a big fan. Excuse me. So, first quarter moon, establishing your own sovereignty within the plan. We're moving a separating aspect between the sun and Venus. Right now we're starting to we got that download from the sun, and Venus is now starting to separate and rise from that sickbed and maybe gain some energy. Excuse me. Sorry. Pardon me. It's very dry in the Midwest here. And sometimes when you're talking for 2 hours straight, I know what it feels like already. You get a little bit of the coughs in the throat here. Dimphy is asking, do you mean the natal Capricorn or the transits in it? You're going to have to clarify that question a little bit more, Dimphy. I'm not sure what the context of that is, since we had a little bit of delay in our in your question. So I'm going to move on, but if you put your clarification in the chat, I'll see if I can circle back around to it. All right. So that is the first decan of Capricorn. I'm sorry, the second decan of Capricorn, the first 10 days of the month. Let's move forward to the Sun in Capricorn 3. So I'm going to break that down real quick. I'm going to see if I can go through these a little bit quicker so I'm not here for 3 hours. Maybe we'll get in under the 3-hour mark. Or if you want to just go on an epic journey with me, that's fine too. Let's see what we've got here. So Capricorn 3 starts on the 10th. So you can see that the sun is moved into 20 degrees of Capricorn. So this is the area of the zodiac between 20 and 30 degrees, or the beginning of Aquarius. And this is a Sun Mercury ruled decan. We have some associations with the Four of Pentacles here. This is you see a figure that is holding on very tightly to his coins or his pentacles, with one on top of his head, and he's standing on two beneath his feet. This has some association with the Sephirat Hesed, which is the flow of loving kindness, like boundarylessness. Although with this Pentacles card, we may be holding on too tightly and blocking the flow of love. This is one of the things I'm learning from this new book from Mark Horn. So I guess one of the things to be careful of during this decade is getting so rigid that you are blocking the flow of love. I would say, on a positive way, this may be a container for all of that spiritual essence and that energy. And we may be starting to administrate the things that we've built in the second decan of Capricorn. So being a solar ruled decan in a Saturn ruled sign, what I've experienced from clients and from people in my own life is that there's a pretty weighty feeling of responsibility in this decan. You will be given administrative tasks. I also associate this decan with the government and like bureaucracy. So Remco's taken off. Nice to see you, Remco. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you the next time. So we are going to be thinking about how to utilize our boldness and our courage in this decan, since it's a solar ruled decan, because the daimon associated with it is called Tolma. And Tolma it translates specifically to courage. So you may have to dig deep when the sun's moving through this decan to be able to manage all of the things that are going on in your life. This is the decan of CEOs and kings and seats of power. But again, don't get fixated on power itself. Power is just a vehicle. And I think that when we're in this decan, we have to think about, how do we use that power to serve? If you're utilizing that power just to accumulate, things can go very wrong in this decan. But if you're using that power and those resources to serve others, that's when that's what you can be at your most powerful, and power that will have less repercussions if you're using it in service of others. Okay. Andrea says, I already see the topics of my 10th house in Taurus beginning to poke me. So the January will be very interesting and exciting. Yeah, me too. Me too, Andrea. We share a Leo ascendant, so interested to see what new things will be coming in the year ahead. Future Past is saying the Four of Pentacles, 38 special, hold on loosely. Yeah, I agree. It is very easy to hold on to things too tightly. 38 special, hold on loosely, don't let go. You hold on too tightly, going to lose control. And that's true. If you become too authoritarian, if you become the dictator, that's when you start to lose the control of the people that you are managing, right? Because you will the next decan that comes after Capricorn 3 is Aquarius 1, which is sort of about rebelling, and you'll experience a defeat if you try to manage with too heavy of a hand. Remember, this decan is also the exaltation of Mars as well at 28 degrees of Capricorn. So it could be very easy to get a little bit overly martial in this decan as well. But strategy comes into play. Mars does well in this decan because there's strategic thinking. There's an ability to see the big picture. There's ability to do the hard work necessary, but also to be able to be patient and see sort of how all of it is going to work out long term, sort of like making a battle plan, like a 5-star general or something like that. So yeah, enslavement to the material world is one of the dangers of this, though. So don't become a slave to all the structures that you've built and that you have to manage. All right, so let's take a look at some of the aspects that we're going to be seeing with Capricorn 3. And we're going to start off on the 10th with a sextile between the Sun and Neptune. So this is something where we recently had Venus making that sextile. So now the Sun is taking its turn, making a sextile between those two planets. So this is just going to bring in some different themes. One of the ways that I look at things from a Hellenistic perspective is, what house is that planet responsible for being the clay to? So in the Sun's case, it's our Leo house. So if we take our Taurus rising example again, if we are bringing in the themes of the first and the second house, or first and the sixth house, with Venus ruling those and providing those from the ninth, in this case, we're going to be providing significations through the Capricorn channel for the fourth house. So if you had a Taurus rising here, and Taurus rising in the audience today are getting some extra special help today. But you may see that through this this Sun-Neptune sextile, that this may be applying to the foundation of your life, to your family, to your property, to your domicile, to your house that you live in. And you may be thinking about whether there are sacrifices that are necessary or different administrative tasks that you have to go through to be able to manage all of that. So that's what we're doing on the 10th. If we move forward to the 11th is interesting because we have another Neptune contact on the 11th, and this is the applying aspect of Mars and Neptune. Now Mars and Neptune, I just have to admit, maybe it's because Neptune's in Pisces right now, and this is totally just my cognitive bias here. Like I'm not really a huge fan of Neptune, and mostly it's just because having a lot of Virgo placements in my chart, I don't really like feeling everything dissolving together into a soup. And I feel like that's kind of the Neptune energy, is everything merging together in this transcendence type of feeling. So my personal experience of Neptune transits is I just lose energy and lose steam, and all of my ability to separate things out into categories is challenged. So as a collective, we may be, with Mars moving through the last degrees of Sagittarius, we're dealing with this holding all the sticks, right? This is that decan that's associated with the last decan before the solstice, where we're trying to really get to the finish line, right? We're trying to, we're barn eager, like a horse that is in the last few miles of a long journey. And when Mars in this decan hits Neptune, I feel like it's just like we unplug the drain in a bathtub or something, and all of our energy is just going down the drain, right? I would be gentle with yourself around this period of time. A lot of us might be grinding pretty intensely around the first few weeks of January, and this aspect on the 10th, between probably the 9th and the 11th, is probably going to have us feeling pretty tired, pretty much asking ourselves the questions: is this sacrifice really worth it? Is my energy being put in the right direction? And I think that the key with this is going with the flow. If your body's telling you to rest, take a rest. If you're banging your head against an immovable object or a brick wall, take a time out and maybe think of a new method. Sometimes just giving yourself a time out from a problem that you're dealing with can help you find a better solution. Sometimes just resting will allow nature to take care of the problem for you. And I think there's some real wisdom in that. And that's a lesson for me to learn as a very Virgo heavy person. I know some of you think I'm a Virgo sun. I'm actually a Cancer sun with a Taurus moon, but I have 3 planets in Virgo. And it's really, those placements really get tested with these Pisces stuff. And Carol is agreeing with me here, Virgo stellium here, that Neptune explanation makes so much sense to me, right? Yeah, I think anything, when you have a bunch of planets in opposition to a placement, you may feel a little foreign with that energy. But Neptune in general, I think, has a dissolving quality. Robert Schmidt would call Neptune the transcendental moon, which I thought was very interesting. He thinks about Uranus as the transcendental sun, where it is like the collective hopes and desires and dreams and points of consciousness, and Neptune being the universal substance, like the body that those universal themes are trying to infuse into. But think of Neptune as, if we're separating things out with the sun as choosing a point of consciousness, Neptune is going to dissolve things back into like this primordial, unanimated soup. And I really like that description of Neptune that Schmidt has, Robert Schmidt of Project Hindsight, because I feel like that. I feel just like a blob when there's prominent Neptune transits in my chart. I have a book on Neptune by Liz Green that I have not yet engaged in, since I have a million books that I keep adding to the list too. But I'm looking forward to her take on Neptune as well, because I always appreciate the myths that she brings in. But just from some cursory glances at it, there is a quality of crusading, sacrificing for an ideal, trying to rise above the mundane aspects of our life. But again, give yourself some runway when you're having prominent Neptune placements happening or transits. All right, let's keep on moving. When we get to the 14th of January, here we see the retrograde of Mercury. So Mercury stations retrograde on January the 14th at 10 degrees of Aquarius. Okay, so this is called a moment of phasis. Anytime we have a stationing, that planet's energy becomes concentrated, and those themes are going to start to become more prevalent in our experience. Phasis was a word that I learned from Robert Schmidt that means an omen that speaks. So Mercury is going to be speaking very loud around January the 14th. It's retrograding in a phase of Aquarius that is associated with the 6 of Swords, where we see 2 figures crossing a river, being ferried across from one place to another. So there may be some traveling challenges if you're doing any traveling around this period of time, but it's more about traveling between worlds. This is a Mercury ruled decan as well. So this is where we're traveling in between the world of idealized forms and seeing if we can bring that back to the earth, like the nuthatch. This is also a decan that is about communication between the people on the edges of society, the people maybe that are in more of exile, and the people that are the insiders, the ones that are in the center. So people in positions of power versus the masses. So there may be some challenges in those types of relationships right now as well. Now, another thing that we see around this period of time is that Mercury is going to be moving under the sun's beams on the 15th. So we've got the retrograde happening on the 14th, and then Mercury is outside of 15 degrees, or is heading, I'm sorry. I'm going to see what's going on here. Yeah. So Mercury is going to be heading into the underworld, all right, in its retrograde phase when it becomes invisible. So you will literally not be able to see Mercury in the sky when it joins 15 degrees of distance to the sun, because the sun's beams will block it out. And in myth, and this is something I've talked with Gary Caton about, is this is the time when Mercury goes into the underworld. Mercury, Hermes, being a guide of souls as a psychopomp, leading the souls of the dead to the underworld. So there may be something that we're having to release to the underworld, that it may have some relationship with the way that we communicate between centers of power, and we may have feelings of being in exile as well with Mercury in Aquarius around this period of time. We may be going internal to figure out new innovative ways to do things that are outside of the box. Communications may break down a little bit around this period of time, but eventually we'll have the cazimi, the Mercury cazimi, where we're infused with a new sense of purpose, and then eventually Mercury will rise outside of the beams and we'll be able to function again in that regards. It doesn't mean that mercurial things can't work at all when Mercury is under the beams like this. It just means that it's a little bit more behind the scenes, maybe a time for negotiations behind the scenes, where we are really trying to understand our thought processes around things. Mercury likes to question things and destabilize stuff. So this is times where you're questioning, how do you relate to power? How do you move between your narrative that Saturn is providing here? How do you question which glass ceilings you're accepting? Which limiting beliefs are you letting stopping you from manifesting? And maybe how can you maybe open up to a larger perspective around this period of time as well? As we move forward, I'm checking the chat. We've got Catherine joining us from the Canary Islands. Very cool. Very cool. We've got Andrea saying, I wish you all, again, a happy solstice. Enjoy your day. Going back to Santa's shop. Thank you, Andrea. Join us on January the 31st. Andrea will be coming and talking new moon with us from Croatia, I think. So very fun. Another fun international contributor to the channel here. I'm so happy to be able to have the gift of guests from all over the world. I have a special affinity for I think Scandinavians and Canadians, but we'll see if we can bring in the Baltic area as well. I don't know. Anyway, so moving forward, we are building in this period of time towards a Sun-Pluto conjunction as well. So as Mercury goes under the beams at this moment of phasis on the 15th, the Sun is going to be applying to a conjunction to Pluto. So a lot of the themes that we may have gotten a preview with Venus conjoining with Pluto earlier in December, during the beginning of the retrograde, we're going to have the Sun illuminating those issues as well. So this could be awareness of power structures, awareness of corruption around maybe governmental structures or the way that we're administrating power in our own lives. This is something where, in the past, I've literally seen abductions in the news with Sun-Pluto aspects. Pluto, Hades erupting from the underworld and abducting Persephone. So this is something so these are themes that crop up every once in a while. But in your own life, I think it's important to bring whatever is in shadow into the light around this period of time. Recognize that when you bring awareness to something that's been repressed, I think this is one of the things with Pluto, as we push things underground into the underworld. When we bring those things into the light, it's much easier to deal with them rather than having them bang around instinctually behind the scenes, creating all sorts of challenges. So this may be a great time to do a little bit of solar cleansing of the backed up Capricorn areas of your life. If you have a system that you're working on that helps you organize your life, reevaluate it around this period of time. Really get clear onto how you are administrating that power. Are there any integrity breaches around that as well? There can be some power plays and power struggles around these periods of time as well. There's also some times where this can be an awareness of our relationships to authority figures. So I would caution you not to get into a battle with an authority figure around this period of time, because sometimes it can bring out the worst in those types of relationships and those imbalances of equilibrium between who has the the authority and who has the ability to hold power over another person. All right. As we move forward, we are going to see on the 16th. That's our conjunction exactly on the 16th. And that's bringing us to the full moon in Cancer. I'm also going to be having a guest on January the 12th. My friend Sam Bellier from, I believe he is from Florida, who is very well versed in various healing modalities. He's a foot reflexologist and a tarot card slinger, a very good astrologer. Brings in some, I believe, some traditional Chinese medicine into the mix as well. Really knowledgeable person. And he'll be helping me break down this full moon. So I'm very excited and looking forward to hearing his thoughts on the show as well. So let's talk about this full moon. Now, a few things with this. We've got an opposition between the Sun and Capricorn. Remember, we just had the conjunction between the Sun and Pluto. So this full moon is probably bringing to light some of that Capricorn Plutonic energy, right? And when we have the moon in Cancer, we're having some awareness of scarcity and abundance. This decan of Cancer, it really has to do with the haves and the have-nots. It's sort of, the daimon associated with this decan is Hecate. And this is the energy of realizing that when you give life to one thing, or when one thing, embraces abundance, it can be at the expense of others. So we have to think about, if we are abundant, how do we share that abundance? Austin Coppock calls that decan the overflowing cup. So we may have to think about how we're distributing our good fortune, or how we are, feeling a lack of that good fortune as well. How we're balancing our domestic responsibilities and our professional ones. A lot of the times the Capricorn full moon with Cancer moon here is one where we're working really hard, and we have to pay a little bit more attention to what's going on at home and how we're supporting ourselves and behind the scenes in a way that isn't necessarily public. And a lot of those things could be revealed around this full moon. Again, I think that the themes of power plays could be at hand here as well. Be careful that you're not utilizing any manipulative impulses with your family as well. I mean, sometimes it's easy to, in pursuit of a goal or pursuit of increasing our material resources, it can be really easy to be not super nice to the people that are our domestic foundation. And I think that communication is really important with that, but also scheduling time to be together with those that you love. This is something that I routinely reminded myself of as a younger person, as trying to get to the top of your field isn't really a fun thing if you get there and you're all alone, right? If you get there and you don't have anyone to share it with. So maintaining your integrity and your relationships as you move forward in your ascension to whatever goal that you're trying to achieve is really important. And I think that may be coming to a head around this period of time. Now, another thing that I wanted to point out that's happening around this full moon is a fixed star placement that I'm very curious to see what kind of energy we're experiencing here. Here we have Jupiter at about 4 degrees of Pisces, and this is a fixed star called Fomalhaut. And Fomalhaut is the mouth of the southern fish that's at the base of the Aquarius constellation. So we've got Pisces Australis, the southern fish. It's a different fish than the Pisces constellation that we use for our zodiac. But we are receiving some kind of water of life with this Fomalhaut. It's a fixed star that is one of the 4 royal stars of Persia that used to mark out the solstices and the equinoxes. So this one, before precession hit, used to be in Aquarius. in tropical Aquarius. Now, because of precession, it's in tropical Pisces. But it's very interesting because this fixed star has to do with charisma, idealism. It has a visionary quality. I've heard Austin Coppock describe this star as like the wizard star. So like you're kind of like Gandalf or Merlin or something, trying to utilize the magic of being able to go into the matrix of your imagination and create from that space. So I think that's going to be helping throughout all of these maybe more challenging plutonic energies. So this is something where I think if you tap into that creative energy and be able to utilize your really positive meditative techniques, where you trust your co-creating abilities. And I say co-creating because I think that sometimes we have to surrender to to fate, and sometimes we have pronoia, where we can manipulate our fate. And again, I use that word in the most positive sense, where we can work with fate to create a better outcome sometimes. And I think this may be a time where Jupiter is going to be assisting with that. So realize that you do have power, that sometimes, even if you feel helpless, there's always a divine source that you can connect with, where you can find strength and where you can find healing. And I think that might be part of this full moon as well, is connecting with that internal strength, with that internal ability to find meaning in what you're doing. This is a great time to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? And is it in service of the greater good, or is it in service of just an egoic, selfish desire? Not to say that you can't take care of yourself, but it has to be a balance. Okay, so that's our full moon. Another thing to point out at this full moon is Venus is going to be emerging from the beams. Now, there is some debate, including my good friend Shu, because Shu lives in a place that doesn't have light pollution, so she goes out and visibly witnesses all of this. But Venus is emerging from the beams at 15 degrees of Capricorn. 15 degrees of separation at 13 degrees of Capricorn from the sun. And there's some debate. There's some authors that say that it's like 12 degrees. I can't remember what the aspect that Shu uses, but it's slightly less than 15 degrees in Shu's opinion. So technical details aside on that, this might be a part of time where all of the things that we've been working on with Venus are starting to become visible. And this really works well with the visibility of the full moon too, where something is ripening on the vine. So all of the hard work that we've been putting in, all of the new restructuring of our proverbial blueprints, of the pyramids of our life that support us, we may start to see some of the results around this period of time. And I want to give a shout out to my daughter, Sophie. It's her birthday on January the 17th. So happy birthday, Sophie. She is turning 18 years old, so pray for me. But I'm excited to see her journey into adulthood, and I'm very proud of the woman that she is becoming and the hard work that she's doing to be able to do good in the world. My daughter is thinking about being a librarian, going to school to be a librarian, and helping people to connect with the services that the library provides. She has a third decan Capricorn sun. And one of the things that she's interested in doing is helping to get grants for libraries and be able to advertise the types of services that libraries provide that people might not be aware of. And that's a really great use of that Capricorn 3 energy, is being able to manage resources and administrate resources for the greater good. So happy birthday, Sophie, and I love you very much. All right, so this is our full moon. The other thing we're going to be seeing as we move forward to the 18th is we have a few things. This 18th day is a big day. This is one of the peak days, I think, of the month of January. Okay, so let me try to break this down. There's three very important things happening on the 18th, and I'll try to circle them and point them out. First of all, Uranus is going to be stationing direct at 10 degrees of Taurus. So this will feel like an ability to integrate some of the new rhythms and routines in regards to managing our material resources. So if you've been reviewing the new things that you want to incorporate into your life in the Taurus ruled area of your life and how you manage your resources and your time, this could be the time when you really start to see things move forward and the wheels are greased to be able to bring that new Promethean energy into your life. The next thing that we're seeing is the nodal shift. So we have the North Node moving into Taurus and the South Node moving into Scorpio. And this could be changing the types of themes that we experience in regards to what is increasing in our awareness and social values and what is decreasing. We've just gone through a period of time where we had an increase in the Gemini area of our lives and in Gemini in general, where we were increasing the need and the ability to be flexible. We needed to see things from multiple different perspectives, and we needed to release the South Node, some of our old crystallized belief systems about maybe the way that things should be done or the way that they've always been done. We saw a little bit of a destabilization in the Gemini area of our lives, where truth was a little bit hard to come by sometimes. It was very difficult to figure out what was real and what wasn't. Everyone had an opinion, and finding out what information in real time was legitimate and what wasn't became a little bit more of a struggle with those nodes in that position. I tend to believe, like some other astrologers say, that the nodes they shake up the areas of life that they are in. In Vedic astrology or Jyotisha, they think of these nodes as the severed head of a demon, and the severed headless body of that same demon. And that demon was trying to consume the elixir of life. And because that was a big no-no, he had his head chopped off by, I believe, I don't know if it was Krishna or another prominent deity in that system. So what does that mean? Wherever the North Node is going to be going, we may have a desire for increase that is insatiable, a hunger for that in our lives. Wherever the South Node is, we're probably going to be processing old karma. Old forms are going to be released in that area of our life. So what is increasing? What are we desiring when the nodes move into Taurus? Well, especially in the third decan, we want material increase. We're going to be dealing with new forms of currency. We're going to be dealing with new rhythms, new routines. I think that one of the things I was meditating on is that since the nodes move backwards for the most part, they retrograde for most of the time, we're going to start out in the third decan of Taurus, which has to do with the forces of nature that threaten our crops and our fields and the seeds that we've planted. It has to do with like pests and pestilence that threaten the fields. So I think with this change with the nodes into Taurus here, potentially there could be some more natural disasters that we have to deal with. The effects of climate change could start to be felt even more intensely, and we have to figure out what we're going to do about that. I think there could be disruptions in supply chain things that we're already seeing. Unfortunately, and this is something I discussed on a previous show with Michael A. Bryan, it may also speak to some issues with inflation, hyperinflation in America, and some financial reckoning that the United States is going to be going through that could have an effect on a global scale as well. So I would say that as far as what the South Node would be doing to balance this out, we may be reducing our addictions. We may be composting our need to feel reliant on other people sometimes as well. There is some themes of independence in Taurus as well. We may be reducing the way that we merge with others in ways that are toxic. There's some themes with Scorpio with this like deep emotional bonding, and sometimes it can be healthy and sometimes it can be challenging. So those are some of the things to start considering with this. It's also going to increase, I think, the power of Uranus and really shaking up our material reality. I don't have an exact idea about what that could be. I have some kind of various general themes, but the astrology always surprises me on some level. But I think my main advice for that is to connect with the center of the hub. These turnings are going to keep on happening over and over and over again. And this has never been clearer to me as to when I started my career as a professional astrologer. It's endless. And if you constantly get swept up in all of these changes, you're going to burn yourself out. And ultimately, I think the goal of studying astrology, and this is something I learned from my astrology teacher, Trita Bhava of Nightlight Astrology. Go support his Kickstarter, by the way, if you haven't. He's doing some great work. Is that when we get centered and when we realize that these are all just ephemeral spinnings and turnings, that's when we really become at peace. So I think that if you want to increase your sense of peace, you're going to have to release some of the anxiety of all these changes that are coming and flow with them in the way that maybe a Taurus would. You may have to be a little bit more patient. You may have to release some of your emotional intensity and say, well, this is fine. This is good enough. As a Taurus moon, sometimes the vibe I get is there's an inertia quality where sometimes it's difficult to get started, but once you're started, you can't stop. There's another quality of like just satisfaction. Like this is the nocturnal domicile of Venus, where you're trying to harmonize your inner world. You're trying to get in touch with your body and saying, oh, does my body feel good? If I feel good inside, I can create peace in my external world. And a lot of times Tauruses, if they're good internally, then they're good with whatever's going on around. I mean, that's true for me. If I'm feeling good within myself, like there can be chaos all around me, and I'm just like, whatever, I'm good, like, so there's disadvantages to that, but I think that that's the key is finding inner peace around this nodal shift, and practicing the self-care and realizing that, material reality isn't the only reality, even though it may feel like we're losing some things or there's some disruptions around how we utilize our resources. Coming back to the center is always a good plan. The last thing that's happening on the 18th, because there's one more thing that is important, is, you remember I was talking about heliacal settings of planets? Well, check out Saturn. Saturn is making its heliacal setting, which means it's coming within 15 degrees of the sun. It is becoming invisible in the sky under the beams of the sun. So Saturn is weakening. Now, what does that mean? I did some research on this earlier in the year because I was fascinated by the heliacal synodic cycles of Saturn and Jupiter and all of these planets and Mars. The Saturn one's important for the collective. We are seeing Saturn weakening as it goes under the beams. So the last time we had Saturn setting, that's what it's called. Heliacal setting is when it goes under the beams and Saturn's taking to its sickbed. The fabric, the ordering structure of society starts to break down. Now I'll give you the last date or the lead up of dates when Saturn was going under the beams. It was roughly between January 4th and January 7th of 2021. Do any of those dates sound familiar to all of you in America? If they do, they should, because those were the dates that we had the insurrection at the Capitol and the storming of Congress and the breakdown of structure around that period of time. So it felt like all chaos was we had a transition of power, and it felt like everything was breaking down, and it was a point of anxiety. Now, I will also remind you that Mars was moving in the last degrees of Aries and moving into Taurus at that point too, so we can't say that we will experience the exact same thing again, because Mars will not be doing that this time. But we may see, and as a collective and in our lives, some of the breakdowns of some of the old ordering principles, some of the old blueprints that we are working on. And it's temporary. There may be about a 15-day or 2-week period that we feel a little bit out of sorts as the sun comes into conjunction with Saturn. That Cazimi is going to be happening on February the 4th. So if you can hang in there until February the 4th, there'll be a new infusing of structure back into your life. And then eventually Saturn will make its heliacal rise on February the 20th at 17 degrees of Aquarius. So we're going to be getting some new idealism, some new ways that we're ordering our lives, some new narratives, some new intellectual ideas that help to organize all of the actions that we take. And if you feel a little disorientated around this time, this might be contributing to it. So in review, on the 18th of January, Uranus stations direct in Taurus. The nodal shift happens from Gemini North Node to Taurus North Node, and the South Node moves from Sag to Scorpio. And Saturn will be making its heliacal setting and moving under the beam. So again, all of those things together speak to a pretty big day for most of us. We will feel the energetic shift significantly around this period of time. All right, let's move on. So we've made it through Capricorn season. Now, just one final thing before I move on. The last time the nodes were in Taurus, North Node was between April of 2003 and December of 2004. So I want you to look back in that time if you want to make some connections between some of the things you might be experiencing again around this period of time. Okay, now moving on. Everybody doing okay out there? We still have, anybody still with me? Like, I see we still got some people here. Thank you for hanging out with me. And thank you for all the donations that you've been making in the chat. I really appreciate that. The super chats, really appreciate your support. This is a great time to remind you to like this video if you are watching. You can really do me a huge favor by getting it out to more people and making the algorithm happy. As we move forward to the 19th, we're going to be seeing the shift of the sun into Aquarius. Okay. Future Past says, I love how thorough you are. Very impressive. Thank you, Future Past. That is one of the things that I get that a lot. Thoroughness is the word to describe my my approach to astrology. It's not for everyone, but for those who are into it, I think it is. I hope that I'm providing a service for all of you. I just can't help it. That's just the way that I am. That's the way my brain works. And you don't always have to take all of it in, but if some of it piques your oracular neck hair, I will call that, then it will be worth it, right? And I think oracular neck hair is when you get those little bumps of recognition when something hits a nerve or when something is truth for you. And Tanya is stopping in from inside the house saying, maximum Spencer. Like, yes, this is, you all haven't gotten a face full of Spencer in a while, right? With these solo podcasts. Having guests has been a real good experience for me. As a Leo ascending, having a guest has really tested me to learn how to listen, learn how to create space for others while also contributing. And I think that that's why I'm keeping it where I have guests on some, and maybe I'll do these monthlies solo, just so there's a balance between those two types of things. And I think that sometimes you need to get the heat of the sun, like with just the Leo rising, and sometimes you need my Taurus moon, where we're just bringing in everyone, and that's why I think it's good for the moons, where we're collecting everyone's opinion and seeing if we can find the balance there. Tanya says our new band name is Oracular Neck Hair. I love it. And Nadini is pointing out my Virgo-ness here. Yeah, I have a lot of Virgo fans. And Jupiter in Virgo, Saturn and Mars in Virgo. So you're hearing a lot of that in these shows. But thank you for bearing with me, and I apologize if I'm not your cup of tea. I will actually not feel super bad about that, because at the end of the day, there's so many different options for ways that you can get your content, and I'm just being myself. And if it's not for you, that's okay. There's other ways to get this information. But again, I really appreciate all of you who hang out with me in these lives, and I love this interaction. Okay, let's move forward to and finish up with the last kind of decanic period of time, the last 10 degrees. I think we're at about, what time are we at here? How long have we been going? Oops. Anybody tell me in the chat? Where are we at? We're at, I'm wasting time just thinking about it. We're at an hour and 45 minutes here. So I think if we power through, we can get in under the 3 hour mark, closer to 2.5 hours. So if you've got another 30 to 40 minutes for me, we'll break down the rest of this. Everyone is such a trooper. Okay. At some point, if someone wants to be my time stamper, that might be helpful too for this audience. Okay. So as we move forward to the 19th, we are seeing the sun moving into Aquarius. Now, a couple things happen as the sun moves into Aquarius. This is a decan that's called the Mark of Exile in Austin Coppic's book, 36 Faces. It is associated with the Five of Pentacles, the Five of Swords card, where we do see a figure that has experienced some kind of conflict and defeat. All right. Remember, we said this is about going off into the frontier, being exiled outside the castle walls. So we're on the fringe now. We're going off into our own, area that is not in the center of the society. We're on the periphery of the society now. The Sephira associated with the fives in tarot is called Gavura. And Gavura, man, I had a real experience with Gavura during our meditation. I did a whole Gavura week. And really, Gavura is about structure. Gavura is about discipline, boundaries, limitations, but containers as well. So we may start to feel with the sun in the first decan of Aquarius that we're dealing with some kind of limitation, some kind of boundary that we're trying to create in our life. We may feel like we've got ideas that aren't being accepted by the powers that be, but we have to still, if we believe in something, and this is one of the secret keys to Aquarius, if we believe in something, and even though we may not get the recognition that we deserve for it, we need to kind of go ahead with it anyway. If we really feel like it's in alignment with our integrity, that's the difference between Leo and Aquarius. Is Aquarius doesn't need the applause or the audience, and in fact, sometimes has to go against the grain to be able to carry out their Saturnian mission, right? To carry out what has to be done for the good of the future generations, for the good of the long term, rather than just the moment that we can see with Leo sometimes. So I think thinking long term, delaying gratification, releasing the need to have approval from people in your life. If you know it's the right thing, then go for it anyway. The daimon associated with this decan is called Daiki, which translates to justice or liberation on some level from any unjust social structure. Sometimes the reason why we go off into exile is because we've experienced some kind of injustice. We say, oh, well, this isn't fair, so we're not going to participate in this corrupt institution anymore. So see you later. We're going to go live on the fringe of society. I know this. My friend Shu has some prominent Aquarius placements, and she's living off the grid. And I've had some good conversations with her about this very issue. So think about that as we move forward. We've got one fixed star in this decan. It's at 2 degrees of Aquarius. It's called Altair, which is it's associated with the military. It's a military star, which it's in the constellation Aquila, which is an eagle, the eagle of Zeus carrying the thunderbolts. So we may feel like we're, carrying the some electricity around that time when the sun hits that fixed star. But try not to get too fixated if you're feeling excluded. Sometimes you may go off in intentional exile, and that's okay. It's okay to not be visible all the time. The sun's at one of its weakest points here. The sun itself is in its exile. So we may not be able to do things for our own individual desires when the sun is in Aquarius. We have to think in more collective terms around this period of time, more altruistically, potentially. Okay, so that's the sun in Aquarius. We're seeing that on the 19th, probably around the end of the day on the 19th. When we move forward we'll move forward a couple days. And here we are moving to the 23rd. Okay. And we've got on the 23rd, oops, I'm going by hours. It'll take us a while. Sorry, keeping a lot of things straight during this forecast. So on the 23rd, you can see that we have Mercury making what is called its inferior conjunction with the Sun, or it's conjoining the Sun in the heart of the Sun, Mercury cazimi. So this is when Mercury is renewing its energy, where it's receiving an energetic boost from the Sun and the furnace of the Sun. Think about it as we've had some old form that needed to be burned away. The dross needed to be burned away, if you want to think about it alchemically, and now we're heating something up with a new sense of purpose. We can forge it into something new, and then it will emerge renewed when it makes its heliacal rise. So with this cazimi, new ideas. It's very, very close to that fixed star Altair. So maybe there's a new way of strategizing. Maybe it's innovative. Maybe it's outside the box. Maybe you're feeling a little bit on the fringes, but lean into that. This is a Venus-ruled decan. And one of the significations of this decan is being able to find beauty in things that other people discard. And Austin talks about copper and a coppersmith in this decan in 36 faces, where the material he's working with is maybe not as of high a value as gold or silver, but you can still fashion something useful with it, right? Copper is a really useful metal. So think about that. What can you create that's of use? How can you create beauty from things that other people have discarded around this period of time? And how can you make it useful for not just yourself, but for your community? All right, so that's our cazimi. Amber is asking us, does that look right to you, the Venus retrograde? Hot dog emojis. I don't know. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I like the hot dog emojis. Venus retrograde is going to be fun. Yeah. We're seeing Venus is about to station direct, so we'll get to that in a second. So hot dog emojis aside, when we move forward the next day, I love the hot dog emoji, actually. It makes me want a hot dog right now. I was born in Chicago, and I always like a good Chicago-style hot dog. If any of you are from the Midwest and you know of a place called Portillo's, really great Chicago dogs if you're in that area. But anyway, my Taurus moon is coming out now. The other thing I wanted to point out, that on the 24th, not the other thing, as we just continue to move on, starting to get to the point where I'm fatiguing, is we are seeing the ingress of Mars into Capricorn. So here is Mars's movement. What is going on here? Sorry. Here is Mars's movement into Capricorn, January 24th, 7:52 a.m. So Mars is gaining a whole mess of dignity. This is the exaltation sign of Mars. So it's at the height of its powers. We can think of the Two of Pentacles energy, where we may be directing a lot of our energy into finding a new place to lay our foundation, where we're weighing the pros and cons of an area and discovering what the laws of the land are. This is great for strategic thinking. The reason why Mars can do really great work in Capricorn is because it's able to both take action, but do it in a way that's very patient. I was discussing this at the beginning of the show, where you're able to say, okay, you're able to think about a battlefield, for example, if we want to bring Mars into the picture, and say, what is the strategy? Where are we going to send the troops next? How are we going to, figure out how this is going to work out for the long term? Mars in Capricorn offers a lot of endurance too. It's very different than Mars in Aries, which you may have a burst of energy and then you may get tired. It's different than Mars in Scorpio, where Mars may be directed towards, emotional bonding, right? And towards really like fusing with someone else's consciousness. In Capricorn, Mars is really saying, all right, we're going to build something. We're going to lift some heavy stuff. We're going to think about the long term. We're going to pace ourselves in a way that is helpful for creating something that will last. So think about that as you go forward. The other thing I could think about is the combination of courage, Mars, and the stoicism of Saturn. So courage and stoicism can lead to calm under fire. A lot of times when you find yourself in a conflicted situation, if you freak out and you panic, you're going to make the problem worse. One of the benefits of Mars and Capricorn is that you may be really sober in your thinking. So the way you approach your problem, the way you have your plan of attack is through calmness, through centeredness, through being able to say, what is necessary to do right now? What do I want or what do I desire, but what is really necessary? So that's happening on the 24th. As we move forward to the 25th, we're seeing Mercury retrograding back into Capricorn. So we've got Mercury dipping its toe back into Capricorn to be able to review, our bureaucratic structures again, and it will be making an application to Pluto. So you may be discussing something moving forward. Now this coincides with the last quarter moon. All right, so earlier in the day before, we had the moon at about 5 degrees of Scorpio squaring the 5-degree Aquarius sun. Now this is this one could be funky. Both of the luminaries are in places that they are not happy in. So we have the sun in exile in Aquarius and the moon in its fall in Scorpio. So this one may be something where you may be experiencing a loss. 5 of Cups has a figure in it that is mourning. But the key with this is to not get fixated on what you've lost, because getting fixated on what you've lost could lead to the defeat, or maybe the defeat is causing you to fixate on something that you've lost. But returning to the point of gratitude is a way, I think, to get through this, while also identifying the types of habits and behaviors that may be leading to suffering. One of the things that I uncovered in my Scorpio Decans webinar is that a lot of the composting energy of Scorpio is about getting rid of desires that are based on trying to keep old forms alive that are no longer vital. So when you recognize the need to let go of something, the suffering comes from trying to keep that thing alive. And that can lead to all sorts of things like addiction, like corruption, like, heinous acts that are out of alignment with your moral fiber. So identify anything that you need to release around this period of time. And it's a really great time for releasing bad habits because it's a last quarter moon as well, which is all about really releasing. The waning moon is about, getting rid of stuff. Like in the disseminating phase after the full moon, we're releasing the wisdom that we learned at the full moon. But at this last quarter, we have sort of an existential crisis where we're saying, how do we prepare ourselves for that new lunar cycle that wants to come? All right, I live this cycle. I have a last quarter moon phase, and there's a lot of second guessing that happens. And sometimes that creates a lot of pain. And sometimes when you just make a decision and get rid of something, that's when you can feel at peace once again. So that's what I would recommend here at this last quarter moon, letting go of old desires and utilizing unorthodox methods to move forward with your life. Got a couple things coming in the chat. Amber is saying, from the movie Blades of Glory, like the two, I'm going to slowly leave. Love you, Spencer. Thank you, Amber. Thank you for stopping by today. And I'll have to rewatch that Will Ferrell movie. I think I've seen that one once, but I love Will Ferrell, and I will think of you the next time that I watch it. Thank you, Andrea, for being here today. Future Past saying, exalted Mars for my solar return. I wonder if this year I finally get buff. Yeah. Yeah, the commitment to lift heavy things, right? I think that's a great expression of Mars in Capricorn, is saying, all right, I'm going to do the heavy lifting and I'm going to commit to it for the long term. And Susanna has given us a super sticker. Thank you so much for your donation, Susanna. I really appreciate the support of all of you and the donations that you make to the work that I do. It fills my heart with joy, and it helps me to, you're buying me the gift of time to do the research of these nitty-gritty type of forecasts. All right, so that's our last quarter moon. We're rounding the bend to our last few aspects here. And on the 28th, on January the 28th, we're moving through that balsamic. We're going to begin that balsamic moon phase. We see Mercury making the conjunction with Pluto. Okay, so here's our Mercury-Pluto conjunction, the 28th and the 29th, all right, of January. So again, anytime Mercury and Pluto meet up, there can be either a mental fixation on something. We can get obsessed with an idea. There's an intensity that gets infused into Mercury. But again, we may be questioning and exposing some of that corruption that Venus was also bringing up as well. So you may be negotiating some kind of deal with somebody in a power structure situation. So I think that this is the time where you may be communicating with people in authority, with people that may be either your boss or that you have authority over. And there may be a restructuring of who is responsible for what around this period of time. So that's the main thing I can see coming out of this Mercury-Pluto conjunction. Similarly, we also see Venus turning direct at 11 degrees of Capricorn on January the 29th. And this is happening trine Uranus, so we've got this Venus-Uranus trine that's now it will be separating. But this is a time where we can really start incorporating the new plan that we've been reviewing and the new values that we've been exploring over the Venus retrograde period. So unifying with others will become easier when Venus turns direct. Okay, so this is something where, remember, second decan of Capricorn is about gathering together with others to achieve an ambitious project. So now you may be able to see that start to move forward again. So this is about getting the team on board, right? Your innovation for resource management, material resources may start to move forward again as well. So again, another big day, end of the month here. This is also going to be coinciding in this little section of time with an applying aspect of the Sun to Uranus. So you can see this is applying right here. It perfects on January the 30th at 10 degrees of Aquarius and Taurus, respectively. So there may be a little bit of restlessness around this period of time, some disruptions that we may feel on a collective level. There may be some challenges around resources around this period of time. I think that there could be some financial market instability around this Sun-Uranus square. There's an awareness of a need for collective action around our resources. This could also be a time where we're seeing some natural events happening that may throw us for a loop, that break us out of our routines, that require collective action. I always hope for the safety of everyone out there, but we're definitely seeing more extreme weather events happening. We just had, some crazy tornadoes in the heartland of America that were very unexpected, that did a lot of damage. So we'll see. I guess I would say, without going too crazy about it, have your emergency plans in place if you live in an area that is susceptible to power outages or things of that nature. It never hurts to be prepared. You shouldn't be over prepared or live in fear, but at the same time, having a good, making sure you have flashlights, making sure you have some emergency food or things like that, that can really give you some peace of mind, so that if anything like that could happen in the future, you'd be prepared, or more prepared than you would be normally if you didn't have that stuff in place. Recently, we had a power outage a couple months ago, but it was very disruptive, and we realized that our emergency plan wasn't really on point. We had an entire 24 to 36 hours without power, and we needed to get new flashlights and new batteries for stuff, and we needed some like emergency pantry food that wouldn't go bad. And just having those things on lockdown is, I think, is a good idea around this period of time. So that's the 30th with the square of Uranus and the Sun. You could have some really great ideas around this period of time if it's not some big natural disaster. It could just be something where you're really trying to incorporate some new thing into your life, but there's a little bit of tension around it where it feels a little bit uncomfortable. And leaning into the discomfort, I think, is better than resisting it. The other thing that's happening on January the 30th, and really the last thing that we have for our forecast here, aspect-wise, is we have Mercury. Mercury emerges from the beams. So right at the same time that we have a square between the Sun and Uranus, Mercury will be making a moment of phasis and becoming visible once again. So some of those negotiations we may be having with power are going to start to be visible, and they may come to light. There may be some things where we see some things in the news about some deals that have been negotiated with government structures or something like that that bring a shock to the system. And I don't want to be a fearmonger here. I'm not all about that. I think that there's always going to be changes. We're going through a lot as a community right now. And I think that if you're practicing your good self-care, you're paying enough attention to know if you need to take action, but not getting so fixated on some of these collective things that you are constantly living in fear. There's an important balance to be struck between those two actions. And it's, you don't want to put your head in the sand, but you also don't want to be so immersed in it that you'll not be able to function. So that would be my advice for this end of the month here. And thank you very much, Future Past Astrology, for your donation. I really appreciate all of the super chats and super stickers that all of you have been contributing this year. It fills my heart with joy to be able to have this beautiful energy exchange with all of you today. Okay. Well, my friends, that is the transits for January. Now, I have a couple more things for you. I have maybe a little to tie a bow on this. I did an I-Ching reading for you, and we have an animal symbol that may help us to understand what we're dealing with. So I'm going to look at this notes over here. The hexagram that we have for January and the astrology of January 2022 is number 55. And number 55 roughly translates to abundance, zenith, fullness, splendor, or plenty. This is about being generous, about acting decisively in the moment, okay? Being present and making the most of a good time. Like there's a story associated with hexagram 55 about an eclipse that was coming. And the eclipse was a sign to a leader that had been in exile to return and take the mantle of power. And if this person had not had the right timing and not taken on the responsibility to do what was necessary, he would have missed his moment. So the key here is to recognize the right moment to take action on something, to be able to utilize your good fortune and be generous with others. And there's three changing lines with this. So there's a story that's going to be told with this abundance. The first line says, abundance is screened so completely that no one can see the pole stars at noon. He meets a lord who is his equal, good fortune. So line number 4 in hexagram 55 talks about the ability to advance is blocked out or has been blocked out, but now you may encounter the right elements to move forward in your life. And maybe this is Jupiter moving into Pisces where you're saying, well, this is the right time to finally take action on that dream. And you have the support of Saturn to be able to bring that into fruition. Combining your enthusiasm with shrewd judgment is important with this line to finally be able to find the right type of people to work together with. Remember, 3 of Pentacles here, 2nd deck in Capricorn, to be able to work together on an ambitious project. So make sure you're picking good friends and good coworkers that you trust. That's important. Line number 5 says, beauty and brilliance come forward. Blessing and fame draw near, good fortune. So again, we're saying about, they're talking about being modest in your endeavors. When you're making your ascension, you have to avoid the downfall of pride or of ego. You have to remember the people that have helped you as well. That's very important. You have to have the humility to seek help when it's necessary. A lot of the times we think we have to be competent in every single area of our life, and it's just not possible to do that. There are some people that have an expertise in one area of life, and delegating responsibility to them and asking them for help can be the most humble act that you can do. And it can really actually create a much better experience when you're trying to move forward, especially when you're working together with others. So let other people shine in the area that they have their expertise in. And if you can master that ability, you can be a great administrator for the projects that you're working on. So invite good counsel. Make sure that the advice that you're getting is from people that you trust and from people that have expertise in their field. Because if you're trusting people that are charlatans or don't have expertise in their field, that can lead to some really awkward situations that you may have to, clean up a mess later. Line number 6 says, abundance in his house, he screens off his family. He peers through the door, lonely and abandoned. For 3 years, he says, no one, misfortune. Now, this is a warning at the very top line of abundance, where the abundant times can't last forever. And we have to take advantage of the prosperity that we have in the moment. We also have to be aware that if we are hoarding our resources and acting selfishly, that can destroy all the goodwill that we've built with others. So sometimes your desire for power and success can cut you off from others. Sometimes when you ascend to a throne, which we see in the 4 of Pentacles, it can make you a little bit, a little full of yourself. And it can make you a little bit like, oh, I don't need everybody's help. I'm powerful now. And realize, I think the key with this is to realize that along the way, there's been so many people that have helped you to get to that position of power. And you need to return that goodwill to others. And if you are a helper, you need to be supportive as well. So share. That's really the lesson of this line. Be generous with what you have. Be gracious with those who have helped you if you are working on an ambitious project. Be generous with your teaching. I used to say this in my songwriting classes, if you are an experienced person, get in touch with beginner mind, right? And say, be generous with your wisdom and share. And if you are a newer person, respect people who have gone through the experience themselves and be willing to learn from them. It's that type of cycle of exchange that can lead to success. Okay. So with that 4 of Pentacles card, don't get blinded by that material success. Wealth comes in many forms. Sometimes the wealth can be in wisdom. Sometimes the wealth can be in your relationships. Okay. If you ignore the relationships around you, like say at that full moon in Capricorn, you're ignoring your domestic relationships. That can really put a strain on your professional life. So it's all about balance. It's all about equilibrium. It's all about staying in harmony with all of these energies. Now, this hexagram is moving to number 37, which translates to the family, the household, the clan, the close-knit group, playing your part and establishing reasonable expectations, serving as an example to others and creating mutual trust with one another. So in the ancient Chinese household, everyone had a specific role. So if you figure out what your role is, maybe you're better at the support role. Maybe you're better at taking the lead and being the authority figure. And it doesn't have to be permanent, one of those roles. You can trade roles every once in a while. That happens in a relationship all the time. But in this period of time, figure out where your skills and your abilities are going to be best served, whether it's in a supportive role or in a leadership role. And be willing to play that role to the best of your ability. And you'll be able to create success by working with others. Be supportive of the authority figures in your life if you're working in a more subordinate role. Be gracious to the people that you serve if you're in a position of authority, because power without service is authoritarianism and corrupt. So think about the greatest leaders, the greatest kings or whatever were the benevolent ones that thought about utilizing that power in service of their community. All right, the last thing I have for you is we'll talk a little bit about that deer animal symbol. Deer is an animal that is very, it has significations that have to do with gentleness. A deer is very aware of its surroundings. It's got these large ears, these large eyes. It has a great sense of smell. It is a prey animal, so it has to be aware of dangers. It has to be very observant of its surroundings. So I think that this is important for you to trust your instincts. And if you feel like there's a situation that you're in that may not be in alignment with your integrity, or if you're in close proximity to someone that may wish you harm, trust those feelings and remove yourself. A deer can spring into action and run very fast if it's being threatened. So practice humility, gratitude, empathy. You don't, in your pursuit of your goal, you have to be careful that you're not using that iron fist. You have to be balanced with your communication with others. This is the balance of Hesed and Gebura, where the severity that you may need to move something forward, the discipline, has to be balanced with loving kindness. Your criticism of someone that you're working with has to be balanced with a complementariness and of building someone up. Remember the compliment sandwich. I think that works with the deer as well. And realize too that a deer is really it's winding its way through the forest. It is, sometimes it's taking what comes, going with the flow. And it's good to have a plan, but it's also good to be flexible. And sometimes there's going to be a little bit of a twist and a turn in the journey, and trying to realize that getting frustrated can lead to additional setbacks. So if you're feeling like there's delays in your plan, just relax, go back into yourself and your instincts. Remember, the deer has some lunar significations. It's a very lunar animal. So go back into your body, take care of your body, recognize that form is temporary, and that you can adjust the form if the essence is true. All right, my friends, I think that's what I've got for you today. Really appreciate all of you hanging out with me today. This has been fun doing the solo show. I'm excited for the new guests that I have in January. I've got Andrea from Space Tiger Tarot coming on January the 31st to talk about the new moon in Capricorn 2. And I have Sam Bellier coming on, I believe, January the 12th, which is a Wednesday, to talk about the full moon in Cancer 3. So please join me for that. I'll be announcing those and doing promo for it. You can, if you subscribe to my newsletter, which there's a link, you can get updates on that, as well as on my social medias. I'm at Spencer Michaud on Instagram and Twitter. Please, if you can do me a favor, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That can really help the work that I do here. Thank you so much for everybody that's contributed. Thank you, Lisa, for the donation. Really appreciate all of you. And I hope that you're having a good holiday season. I hope that you're staying safe. Please be safe. Recognize that sometimes the vision of how you might want this holiday season to go may not match up with the reality, and that can be painful, but it's okay. This is a really difficult time for everyone, and our expectations need to be tempered. And there's many ways to express your affection and your love for people, even if it's unorthodox. So stay safe, everyone. I wish you a happy holiday, a happy solstice, and looking forward to this journey of the ascent of the sun through this new year. So take care, everyone, and I'll see you the next time. Peace.